Hey everybody, and welcome to Revisiting the MCU, the series where we turn back the clock and revisit, rewatch, and re-review every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie in release order leading up to the epic finale. We're going to be ranking them from worst to best, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that. But today we are talking about the first solo MCU outing of Spider-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, if you're a subscriber, first of all, thank you so much for being a subscriber. I really do value you. Also, make sure you share these videos with your friends. Greatly appreciate it. But second, you may be asking yourself, Aaron, didn't you recently review Spider-Man and the Spider-Man MCU movies not that long ago? To which I would reply, why yes, valued subscriber, I actually did do it not that long ago as part of my Cinematically Late series. But that was a big Spider-Man phase I was going through, and this is now a totally different series, and I didn't feel like cheating out my viewers by not re-reviewing it again. So I didn't want to say, oh, just go watch that video. I still want to make it part of this series, which is why both videos are up. They'll probably be fairly similar considering that they're not too far apart. I think it's about 6 months at maybe the most, maybe a little bit longer. But for the most part, there will be very similar thoughts. I was just trying to compare and contrast and make this its own thing separate from that one, especially now we're talking about the MCU as a whole. But I didn't want to cheat you guys out, so I wanted to make sure I got everything. As I said, this film is the first standalone Spider-Man movie in the MCU and has Peter struggling with balancing his regular life and superhero life as usual, and he discovers that he must stop the villain the Vulture as he commits various heists around New York City and beyond. Now, as I briefly already talked about Tom Holland's portrayal as Peter Parker and Spider-Man in both the Cinematically Late series as well as this Revisiting the MCU series in the Captain America Civil War episode where he was briefly introduced, I'm not going to delve too deep into his character, but what I will say is that he is the perfect blend of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He's basically the whole package. He has the charisma, he has the charm, he's funny, he's quippy, he does all the stunts. He basically does everything, whereas Tobey Maguire was the perfect Peter Parker and Andrew Garfield was the perfect Spider-Man. Tom Holland marries the two and makes the complete character. But there is one massive crutch that Tom Holland's Spider-Man has that the rest of the other Spider-Man didn't have, and that's Iron Man. Now, if you recall, as I've said many times in this Revisiting the MCU series, I'm not a big fan of Iron Man, and this Peter Parker relies very heavily on Iron Man as a mentor and guide, which Tony Stark is very much not great at and very bad of an influence to look up to. The biggest weakness that this Spider-Man has is how his suit, gadgets, and basically every thought that goes through his head is related to Tony Stark. In fact, the majority of the MCU is connected to him, which is fine, but it feels extremely forced. And I wish they were able to better stand on their own as they're all fantastic and rich characters, especially Spider-Man, who has such an amazing backstory, amazing villains, and so much of a world into his own self that we don't even need to build all those things. But that's enough about Iron Man. I've really talked enough about him. Plus, we're going to be talking about him soon with the Infinity stuff, so let's just put it on the back burner for now. But the rest of the movie is pretty fun as we get to see former and soon to be again Batman, Michael Keaton as the villain Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture. He's pretty menacing and intimidating in his own way, and I'm glad this character finally got to be in a Spider-Man movie as I feel he's one of the lesser represented villains. And not only that, but he got to be pretty cool too, rather than being a weirdo as Vulture usually gets a bad rap for being. And as far as the rest of the cast, they're pretty great too. From Zendaya's Michelle, aka MJ, to Peter's best friend and guy in the chair, Jacob Batalon's Ned. In terms of the story and directing from John Watts, it gets a lot of influence from various John Hughes movies, both visually and musically. But where this movie is the most fun is seeing Spider-Man just be Spider-Man. I always enjoy watching Spider-Man doing his best to help others, like stopping a bike thief, helping an old lady with directions, or when the kid side of Peter shows as he makes a hammock out of his webs and is trying to figure out how to best occupy himself or solve a problem. Where this movie stumbles the most, though, in my opinion, has to be with the visuals. Yeah, they're pretty good by today's standards and the action scenes are a lot of fun, but like with the Avengers, a lot of the action and visuals of Spidey happen during the day. And the CG of Spider-Man looks off as his suit is fully CG when doing any form of action and not just sitting around. The daytime doesn't allow for any CG tricks to make things look more realistic, so they just look odd and out of place. Spider-Man isn't necessarily confined to only helping after the sun sets like Batman typically is, but a little bit more shadow or depth could have really brought some of this to life, but what do I know? In short, Spider-Man Homecoming is a pretty fun addition to the MCU. Is it perfect? No, there are still a lot of problems, and I wish some things would have been handled a little bit differently. But it's not necessarily a bad movie and not even a bad Spider-Man movie. It just could have benefited from a little bit of extra love in certain areas, or at least a different direction on certain things, at least in my own opinion. So essentially those are my thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming. I didn't want to dive too deep considering I sort of already recently did a video on it, But if you want to check it out, I will leave it linked below as well as up in the top with the info card. But other than that, those are my thoughts. I do want to find out what you guys think about Spider-Man Homecoming. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. Also, while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future videos, including the continuation of the Revisiting the MCU series, where at the end we'll be ranking them from worst to best. You don't want to miss out on that. And also be sure to check out the Animated Apparel Company YouTube channel, where I have tons of new videos on both superheroes and Disney stuff all the time, as well as we doing live streams of Loki as they come out, as well as other fun live streams, so you don't want to miss out on any of that there. And as an added little bonus, be sure to head over to animatedapparelcompany.com and use my personal code Aaron20 to get 20% off of your order. So get some awesome shirts, hats, and just some really cool stuff, and use my code and make sure you save some money. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope to see you in the next video.